The moment the video leaked, the internet lost its breath. It was a short clip, barely 2 minutes, from a behind-the-scenes documentary that hadn't even aired yet. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson sat side by side on a dimly lit set, a quiet laugh escaping between them. The interviewer asked casually, "You two have known each other for almost 9 years now. How do you keep this kind of bond alive after all this time?" Dakota smiled first, looking down as if trying to choose her words. Jamie glanced at her, his eyes soft but unreadable. Then he said quietly, "Some connections never really end. They just evolve." That was all, but it was enough to break the internet. Within hours, hashtags like #Jamie and Dakota and #9-year bond began trending worldwide. Fans flooded social media with old interviews, red carpet moments, and behind-the-scenes clips, piecing together fragments of a story that, perhaps, had always been hiding in plain sight. "They've always had something," one fan wrote. "You can feel it, it's in the way they look at each other." To understand why that small clip hit so deeply, one had to go back to where it all began. It was 2013 when Jamie and Dakota first met on the set of 50 Shades of Grey. He was already married, a father-to-be, reserved and grounded. She was the daughter of Hollywood royalty, carefree yet guarded in her own way. They were strangers asked to portray the most intimate relationship imaginable, two people whose lives intertwined through love, fear, and vulnerability. Chemistry doesn't even begin to describe what they had. From the first screen test, the connection was electric. The director later said, "The moment they looked at each other, the room changed." It wasn't acting, it was something real that spilled into the performance. On camera, they became Christian and Anna. Off camera, they became something harder to define, partners in trust, in art, in something invisible that everyone else could feel but neither would name. Jamie once admitted in an interview, "We had to depend on each other completely. You can't fake that kind of closeness." Dakota, in her own soft way, echoed it years later. "It was like we spoke the same language, even when we didn't have to say anything." The trilogy made them stars, but it also built a wall between their truth and the world's perception. Rumors exploded. "Jamie and Dakota's secret affair," screamed one headline. "On set sparks turned real," claimed another. Both denied it firmly, but fans weren't convinced. The way their eyes met during interviews, the gentle teasing, the lingering smiles. It was too natural, too unguarded. Through it all, Jamie stayed loyal to his wife, Amelia Warner. He often spoke of his family with deep affection, yet there was always that shadow, the one shaped like Dakota, quietly standing behind every question he couldn't quite answer. When the final film wrapped in 2018, the two promised to stay friends. "We went through something together that no one else could ever understand," Dakota said in a later interview. Still, time has a way of changing things, or perhaps revealing what was always there. While both moved on with their careers, there were moments, glances at award shows, unexpected reunions, cryptic comments, that kept the whispers alive. Then came the reveal. The leaked video wasn't scripted, wasn't part of a press tour, it was real. Candid, honest, Jamie's tone, Dakota's smile, the pause between them. It all felt like a confession, one spoken without words. "Some connections never really end." The phrase was simple, but it carried 9 years of unspoken truth. The media wasted no time spinning it into scandal. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson expose hidden love story, the headlines screamed. But those who truly followed their journey saw something deeper. It wasn't about betrayal or forbidden love. It was about two people who had shared something profound, who carried that bond quietly, respectfully, across almost a decade. Behind the frenzy, sources began to speak. "They've stayed in touch all these years," one insider told People. "There's no drama, just a friendship that means more than most people would ever understand." Another hinted, it wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but it was love all the same. As the clip continued to circulate, fans began noticing details no one had seen before. Jamie's hand brushing Dakota's arm as she laughed, the way her eyes softened when he spoke, the half-smile they shared when the interviewer changed the subject. It wasn't performance. It was history. Later that night, Jamie's team declined to comment, while Dakota's representative simply said, "They have nothing to hide. What you see is what it is." The words only deepened the mystery. And as the internet debated whether this was friendship or something far more intimate, one truth became clear. 9 years later, whatever existed between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson hadn't faded. It had only learned to hide in the quiet spaces between interviews, in the glances that said what neither of them dared to speak aloud. The story the world thought had ended in 2018 had just begun to unfold again. The morning after the clip went viral, Hollywood woke up to chaos. Headlines filled every corner of the internet. Jamie Dakota's hidden love revealed. 9 years of secrets finally exposed. The words felt heavy, almost scandalous, but beneath the noise was something softer, something honest. For the first time in years, people weren't just gossiping about Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, they were listening. Neither of them had planned this. The leaked footage wasn't a publicity stunt, nor part of a film campaign. It was a candid moment, one that slipped through the cracks, a rare glimpse of the truth beneath the polished smiles. That truth, it seemed, had been quietly alive all along. For Jamie, the reaction was overwhelming. He stayed quiet as his phone buzzed with messages from journalists, friends, and curious fans. "It's strange," he told a close confidant, "how something so personal can suddenly belong to everyone." His words weren't angry, just tired. For nearly a decade, he had lived between two worlds. One defined by loyalty and family, the other haunted by an invisible connection he couldn't name without losing control of the narrative. Behind closed doors, Amelia Warner, his wife, handled it with remarkable grace. A source close to the family said, "She's seen all of this before. She knows Jamie's heart, she knows Dakota, and she knows the difference between fiction and reality." Still, the renewed speculation cut deep. Amelia's silence was her defense. She refused to feed the circus. Meanwhile, Dakota tried to stay composed. Filming in Paris, she ignored questions shouted by paparazzi, choosing instead to let her actions speak for her. That weekend, she was photographed leaving her hotel holding a small notebook, the same one she had kept during 50 Shades filming. Fans zoomed in on the cover. 2 faint initials drawn in the corner, JD and DJ intertwined. It was all the internet needed to explode again. Back in London, Jamie finally broke his silence. During an interview with Vanity Fair, the host asked the question the world couldn't stop repeating. "Is there any truth to what people are saying about you and Dakota?" He smiled faintly, eyes distant. "We spent years in a world that only the two of us understood," he said. "It doesn't matter what anyone calls it, love, friendship, or madness, it was real. And it shaped us both." It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't denial either. It was honesty. The kind that didn't need to justify itself. Those words went viral faster than the original clip. Fans called it the softest confession in Hollywood. Others said it was closure after years of silence. But for Jamie, it was neither. It was just truth, finally allowed to breathe. Dakota's response came days later. At a press event for her new film, she was asked directly about Jamie's comment. Her expression softened instantly. "Jamie and I went through something extraordinary together," she said. "We'll always care for each other. That doesn't need to be hidden or explained." There it was, the quiet affirmation everyone had been waiting for. Not scandal, not denial, just mutual respect for something real, something private that had survived fame, distance, and time. Industry insiders began to share their own memories. One crew member from 50 Shades Darker told Variety, "You could tell they had a connection deeper than just acting. It wasn't physical, it was emotional. They protected each other." Another recalled moments between takes when they'd sit in silence, talking about life and fear, as if the cameras weren't even there. "It was like they were in their own world," he said. The press tried to twist it into drama. Headlines about Amelia's heartbreak and Dakota's secret regret, but the truth had already taken a gentler form. What people saw now wasn't scandal. It was humanity. Weeks later, both Jamie and Dakota appeared, separately, at a charity gala in Los Angeles. Fate, or perhaps irony, seated them only a few tables apart. Cameras caught the moment they locked eyes from across the room. Dakota smiled first, a subtle, knowing curve of her lips. Jamie smiled back, a quiet acknowledgement of the years that had passed and the story that refused to die. They didn't speak much that night. A brief exchange, a soft hug goodbye, and they went their separate ways once more. But that single moment told a story louder than any interview ever could. There was no bitterness, no regret, only affection wrapped in understanding. Later, a journalist who attended the gala wrote, "It wasn't a reunion. It was a reminder that love, real love, doesn't always demand a label. Sometimes it just exists, quietly, between two people who will always recognize each other, even from across a crowded room." And perhaps that was the truth the world had been trying to uncover for 9 years. Not a secret affair, not forbidden romance, but a connection that refused to fade. A love story hidden not out of shame, but out of respect for its fragility. By the time the noise finally faded, both Jamie and Dakota had returned to their lives. He, the devoted husband and father. She, the grounded actress with her own happiness. But somewhere, in the quiet corners of memory, their story continued to live, untold, unfinished, and unforgettable. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't the ones shouted from rooftops. They're the ones whispered in silence, surviving in the spaces between two hearts that never quite let go.